y'all, that's right. You know what time it is. It's time for the Sugar Creek Forge Build-Along 2012. I got my hand on the fire, putting the fire to the steel. Come on, Sugar Creek Forge, won't you tell me what's the deal? Alright.
I want to post a video tonight, the next in our series on the Sugar Creek Forge Knife Build-Along 2012. And this video, excuse me, I got the hiccups. This video is going to be about drilling and filing. We're going to use our fixture and show you some basic ways to file. Also, I'd really encourage you watching some of the videos, or as many of the videos as I've been able to see that have been posted. It's been really a lot of fun. And Evie Crawfish is going to post a video. It probably will be up before my video is up on just some proper tool techniques. He's a humble guy. He told me, he said, I don't want to come across like I'm a know-it-all or anything, and it doesn't. And he said to me too, hey, I don't have vast experience. He's made his first knife basically, but he has a lot of experience in metalworking. So although he says, hey, I'm not a renowned knife maker, I have done a lot of metal work, and so he's got some great tips. I mean, I learned some stuff. He showed it to me because didn't want to post it without me looking at it, and that's no big deal. Some of my friends out there too who are experienced with hand tools, Mr. John 714, Artist Blade 1972, just to name a few, Pinto, any of the others, I can't name everybody, but anyone else out there, if you've got a great tip, I'm not offended in the least if somebody posts something saying, hey, here's how I do it, and I learn that way too. So I've been making knives now for longer than I realized. I was talking to my mom tonight about it, and I've been making knives since 1995, I guess, and I don't consider myself, an expert. I consider myself a person who's always learning. So even some of the techniques I do, you may look at and think, well, boy, I could teach Tim a thing or two, or he's not quite doing that right. Man, by all means, let's learn as much as we can from each other, and let's not deviate from what we're trying to do. But I just appreciate all the input and tips and help and advice I can get, and I'm learning a lot as we go along too. So I believe that's the best approach, kind of a humble approach that says, I'm a learner. And so anyway, I want to keep this on point because it's content rich. So putting this video up, there will be another video on filing. But my work has become super busy. I'm going to be going flying to Charlotte and doing some coaching, and then next week I fly to three different cities, training regional sales teams for a big company. So anyway, I want to make sure that I didn't leave any of you in the lurch, that you had something to work with. Also, I apologize. We've had some problems with the U.S. Postal Service. I mean, can you imagine that they have somehow, I don't know if sending out that many boxes at one time sort of confused their system or what the deal was, but I realize some guys have still not gotten their boxes. I've sent out duplicates, to people just to be sure, and I really apologize if that's been the case for you, and that's been frustrating. It's not under my control. We had more material than we needed, and I've already sent out, probably 5 extra boxes just because I just want to make sure everyone gets to do this. And if you get another box in the mail and you end up with 2, please keep that as my gift to you, and the gift from our sponsor, certainly. Anyway, enough on that. Let's get to building a knife, shall we? So I'm just going to take you through this. We're going to be drilling the handle and starting to file on the belt with the knife, and keep up the good work. For those of you who are still kind of waiting, we're not in a hurry. We're going to extend the deadline a little bit just simply because of some people waiting so long to get their materials. Everyone's going to have time to do this, and I just want to make sure the videos are up quickly so that you can follow along. I'd encourage you to watch them too. Sometimes you see, oh, I don't need to watch a video on filing. I already know what I'm doing, or I don't need to make a jig or whatever. please, you just have fun with it. You suit yourself. But I'd encourage you to really look at them and try to duplicate the steps in your own way, or things that you see in other people's videos. So enough talk. Let's get to filing and drilling. So the first thing that we're going to do is work on laying out where the holes are going to be for this knife. And I'm going to use this paper pattern. I just cut out another pattern just like the one I glued on the knife. And first thing I'm going to do is measure a center line and draw it right down the center of the handle. In laying out the thong hole tube for the lanyard, I'm measuring 1/4 of an inch up and 1/4 of an inch over, and simply intersecting those lines. If you drill right there, you will have 1/8 of an inch between the thong hole and the edge of the handle for strength. So this is what it's going to look like. You can see there's plenty of room between the end of the thong hole and the edge of the knife on both sides. And then if you can see the 2 holes I drilled, I simply measured and made sure that they were even measurements between where my handle is going to begin and where it's going to end, and it looks good to my eye. Now I just use a sharp pencil and poke through my holes in my template, and this is what I'll use to transfer the places where I'm going to drill onto my actual blade. And that's why I like the fact that the paper is still intact on it, because it makes it so much easier to lay out. Just a little tip here too, when you're gluing your paper pattern onto your blank, if you want to use this method, cover the entire piece of paper with glue. Spread it evenly and glue it down, and it will last a lot longer in your vise. So let's drill. I've got a 1/4 inch drill bit here and an 1/8 inch drill bit and just an old drill that I bought at a garage sale for $5. We've got our material in our jig. It's secure. We're ready to drill. When drilling, I like to be in a position kind of like this, where I can look straight down on the material and kind of brace the drill against my leg and get a real good grip on it to make sure that we're straight. Hitting the thong hole with an 1/8 inch drill bit and drilling through it as a pilot hole for when we use our 1/4 inch drill. One thing I like about this paper is it does help the drill to not scoot across the material, and it bites in real nice as I drill through. Just going to drill nice and easy. We're not pushing the drill bit through the material, but letting it pull itself through. And it's about that simple. There we have our holes drilled through, and that's what it looks like. The thing that I'm going to suggest that everyone does is that you write your name, and I'm using a drill bit here and just scratching into the metal, and just scratch your name. I'm just writing T. Troyer on it, so that if I send this to a heat treater or anything like that, it's completely identified as my knife, and there's no confusion. So the drill bit's hard, it just scratches into the material very, very easily. And sorry, that's a little off camera, but there's my name. And then here's an alternative way you can do it. You can just take the corner of your file and do the same thing. The file's hard enough, it just works. Or if you have a hardened awl or anything like that, you can use it to do the same thing. Just simply scratch your name into the handle. This is going to be covered by wood anyway, and no one will be able to see this. To get our blade ready to start filing, we're going to mark a little bit on it, some guidelines, and these are really just to kind of give us an idea of what our filing is going to look like. So I'm taking the piece of paper, and I'm actually going to draw on it this paper template to see what my grind lines would kind of look like, where the grind should begin and end. And just kind of freehanding this to give myself an idea of what that knife is going to look like. So once I've done that, I'm just poking a little hole here. This is just a real simple way to, again, transfer some of the details from my pattern onto the knife. I'm just going to put it on here and make a little mark. And I'm going to draw with a Sharpie. It draws on metal very nicely, and that gives me a little bit of an idea of my grind. I'm not going to try to grind right to this pattern, but this just gives me an idea of what the grind is going to look like. This will really be a flat grind, and it just helps me to concentrate on knowing where I should be filing and where I need to be careful. So I've transferred the pattern to both sides, and it's time to put it into the jig. I have those little arrows showing you which way the grind is going to go. I'm actually going to grind back over that line. It's just there because I have a tendency to grind too much off of the tang end as opposed to the pointed end of the blade. Then I'm just going to put a little bit of tape, some masking tape on here, a couple turns of it, to protect the knife from undue scratching when it's in my jig. It's just a real simple way to protect your blade and keep it from getting scratched up. Okay, so this is what the knife looks like in the jig, and we're getting ready to file here. As you can see, I'm using this bracket as kind of a file guide, and it's showing me exactly where to file. I'm just brushing up against it lightly to keep my bevel nice and straight, and to get a nice plunge line in my grind. I really like this for that reason. You can see I've filed down, and now I'm just smoothly and evenly stroking. I'm keeping the file up off of the back of the knife and just starting to establish what my grind is going to look like. I'm doing much more in the back first, and then just kind of draw filing and bias filing. That's what it ends up looking like. You can see how clean that is because of the jig. You just keep doing that up the blade, establishing the angle that you want, and then you can, after you filed in one direction, you can draw file like this, a little bit kind of draw filing on the bias rather than pure draw filing. And this is going to get all your scratches going in one direction and also make sure that your grind is very flat. If I was doing a Scandi grind, I would just make sure that I concentrate all of my grinding on the place where that would be, and I would make a Sharpie mark or something like that to just, guide me carefully, because I'm not using any kind of filing fixture or jig other than just the one that we have and establishing the plunge lines. So I'm just filing one way, draw filing back the other. Just repeating that process. We want to keep checking the edge of the blade and then flip it over and do the same thing. You'll need to put some folded up paper or a wedge of wood under the blade to keep the blade flat when you turn it over and have the side down. So this is, again, I wanted to show you, this is how I would do a Scandi by hand. And then I would just draw file that out. Here you can see how well that's established the shoulder. And for the first phase of grinding, we're really doing well. Okay, so that is what we're going to do for our first session of filing the blade. We'll do another operation of filing that's a little bit finer and moving towards where we're going to actually hand sand the knife. Here's what it looks like, and it really is starting to look like a knife. Now, again, a lot of times what happens at this stage is you get a little carried away and get excited and grind too much off, file too much off. It's easy to do the thinner the knife gets. So a simple way that we're going to be able to check this, like how thick should this be on this first step, is we're just going to do this a real low-tech way. We're going to take an ordinary, this is a 3x5 card. I'm guessing there's some kind of dynamic equivalent in Europe and Australia. But in the US, this is called a 3x5 card. It's 3 inches long, and it's a note card. So you just take this, fold it in half, and then fold that in half. And I'm going to use this just as kind of a low-tech way to gauge the thickness of my knife and where I want it. Now, the thinnest part of my knife is right here because I ground it fairly thin, see if you can see that, to establish these, what's called the plunge line. And you can see I scratched a little bit of a line here so you can see kind of the technique I use. I want this to be established and be very straight in the first session of filing. And then I actually leave a little bit of excess metal up here so that in our polishing and second filing, I'll actually be able to get that very, very straight, and I have a little bit of extra material to work with. So as you can see, I've kind of done that on both sides, and you see there in the camera, our plunge lines are established very, very well. They're quite straight. So the thinnest part of my blade is here, and then the edge gets a little bit thicker. And I just check it with this folded up card in my fingers, and we're doing good. It's a little bit thick in some spots, but very flat because of that draw filing, and we're in really good shape. We're going to take this down for heat treating because we're doing this by hand. We're going to take it down with a little bit more filing, and then we're going to move to hand sanding, and we're going to sand it as thin as we dare to, just to help us so that we're not, when it's heat treated and it's hard, the work's a little bit easier. So I hope you enjoyed that little longer video, but keep up the great work, and thank you so much for watching.
Oh, that's right. You know what time it is. It's time for the